Gifting, taking care of people, doing things meaningful to remember people. I think we all, or the vast majority of us, do a really crappy job at it, but it could make such a big difference. I saw a video recently of Jack Daly getting a gift of a personalized mug that brought everyone in the room, including Jack, to tears. And I thought that is gifting done right. And it's a guest we've had on before, John Ruhlin, but this is, I think, a great show to think about how to make gifting and generosity a part of your relationship management program. So listen in. I think you'll get a lot of ideas from the show. Hello and welcome again to the Scaling Up Podcast. I'm your host, Scaling Coach Bill Gallagher. On the show with me today is a return guest, an all-around rock star, John Ruhlin. So John's outside the St. Louis area with his wife and 3 kids. They're probably not by his side today, but he's the founder of the Ruhlin Group, helps companies develop VIP gifting programs. And I saw a thing John did recently, and I'm like, oh, we have to get him back on the show and talk about what do you give the person who has everything? What would you give a billionaire? What do you give people that makes a real difference? And how is the world of gifting evolving? What's the latest? He's got some cool things to share. Listen in. John, welcome to the show.
Bill, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Tell folks a little bit more about your background, how you became passionate about the world of gifting and that kind of thing for people who don't know you, haven't met you before.
Yeah. So I'm a Midwest farm boy. I didn't grow up in LA or New York or Chicago or Paris or some cool city. I grew up milking goats every morning on a 47-acre farm in the middle of Nowheresville, about 45 minutes south of Canton. If you're familiar with the Football Hall of Fame.
Are you making fun of me now? I grew up in lots of fancy places.
Yeah. I wish I could say I hung out in San Francisco with like Bill Gates and whatever else. Like, that's not me. And so I decided I didn't like blue collar work. I didn't like baling hay in the summer. I didn't like milking goats or hoeing corn in our 1-acre garden. And so I thought doctors made a lot of money, and when you're poor, you're like, I want money. And so I thought I was going to go to med school. And my life changed because I was dating a girl in college, and her dad was on the board of trustees of the college, and he was a rainmaker and was super generous with people, always giving away like he'd find deals on noodles and buy like a semi-load of noodles, or he'd buy like half the raffle tickets for the Christian school auction and like win the Harley, and then he would donate it back again. And I'm like, Paul, that was $30,000. Are you insane? I'll help you sell it on eBay. And he's like, I just love making people smile. Like, I just love being generous. And so I pitched him the idea. I started interning out of desperation for Cutco, the knife company. And I pitched him the idea of giving away Cutco pocket knives to all of his clients and relationships. They're all CEOs of big companies and financial advisors, all that kind of stuff. And he got the little twinkle in his eye that he often did, and leaned back in his chair and didn't make me feel uncomfortable, even though I was pitching him knives for the second time in 2 weeks. And he said, John, I want to buy the paring knives to give out to everybody. And I'm like, oh, you can give a bunch of grown men a kitchen tool? And he said, yep, I found out one thing in 35 years in business. The reason I have more deal flow, referrals without asking, the reason I have more access is I found out that if you take care of the family and what I now call the inner circle, is like everything else seems to take care of itself. So that was what inspired me. I looked at Paul at 60 and I'm like, I want his life. I want to be the guy that everybody loves. I want to be the guy that is never in a hurry. Like, he would take 2-3 hour lunches with me, and he just had this aura around him where deals came his way versus him having to like claw after things. And I'm like, I mimicked him. I'm 20 years old and started to send out gifts to CEOs of $200 million companies. And I started to get access, and I started to, open doors and attract referrals without asking. And by the time I was a senior in college, I was Cutco's largest distributor in the history of the company out of about 1.5 million people that had worked with them over 70 years. So med school got put on hold, and I decided to build a business around helping people use gratitude, gifting, generosity, not as like a warm, fuzzy feeling, but as a way to 10x and 100x their referrals and their business. And that was 19 years ago. So I'm 39 now, and I've been doing this for a little while for $1 million entrepreneurs all the way up to pro sports teams like the Cubs. It's been a wild 19-year ride, that's for sure.
So you still do knives, don't you?
Yeah, people ask like, what's the hot new sexy gift? And And I had a couple articles written about us internationally in Business Insider, and I'm like, the stupid knives are still number one. And they're like, really? And I'm like, well, here's why. Like, when you're giving gifts to people, especially, whether it's a billionaire or whether it's somebody that's a CEO, like it's hard to give them something that they don't already have 100 of. And our big philosophy is taking care of the inner circle. So spouses, families, kids, pets. It's the assistant. It's the people around them. It's hard to buy a gift for somebody that can afford anything they want. But if you make them look like the hero to their family, and the knives are one of those things that everybody eats every day, hosts, they're foodies. Almost every celebration, even in 2019, centers around food and breaking bread with people. And the innermost part of entertaining is usually in somebody's home. So the knives, most people aren't going to go spend hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of dollars on knife sets. And so when they get something like that with their name on it, their family name on it, maybe a date, maybe their spouse's name. Like I've had people that run $750 million companies that are like, John, like I can afford anything, but I literally have my kids talking about fighting over who's going to get the knife set because it has our name on it. And I'm laughing. I'm like, I can't believe people are fighting over knives, but we've seen it time and time again because it's one of those things that just kind of seems weird and odd. And so most people in business, they only do business related things. And I'm like, treat a human being like a human being. Even if they're the CEO or VP of sales or director of marketing, they are still a human. And that's really a lot of our angles come completely at gifting and relationship building and referrals, just from a different angle than what is normal. So yeah, the silly knives still work to this day. My budget this year for gifting is about $450,000 personally, and $350,000 of that'll be knives.
Wow. So still a big deal. Well, you said a couple interesting things there, and I think we should talk about some of the other ones as well that you do. But I think that thinking about that and remembering that people are still humans, right? After all of it, whether they represent a big customer or a big payday to you or whatever, they're still humans at the end of the day. And knowing and connecting with their humanity could make a huge difference. And I found that both like in chairman of a Fortune 100 company, like being able to talk to them at ease, remembering that they're human, dealing with human problems. And also like connecting to a plumber, or the garbage guy. Both things that sometimes people don't regard. Like those are human beings. They have families, they have jobs, they have careers, homes, like that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, it's a simple concept, but people forget.
We sometimes forget. We relate to them as, oh, they're that guy. No, that's a small business person, and like that. Talk about the latest kinds of gifts that you've been doing, the things that make people feel really special. The reason that I called you back on is I saw the mug that you did, and so maybe that's a good example.
Yeah, well, the irony of it is I used to make fun of mugs as being the worst gift on the planet, and they usually are, because most people, they spend $5, $10, $20 on a mug and they put their logo on it, which, if anybody of your tribe learns anything today, putting your logo on it makes it not a gift. It makes it a promotional item. It makes it all about you. And I just talked to somebody the other day that runs a huge organization, and like one of the largest in the world in the internet marketing and kind of like traffic space. And he's like, I just had this influencer, this guy who runs a huge company, send me, a box, and it was like a T-shirt and a hat and a mug with his logo on it, and they all went into the trash. And I'm like, he's like, I'm never going to tell him that. But I'm like, oh, like this just drives me crazy that people in 2019, they like want to talk about being green. Like, stop giving a bunch of crap from China with your logo on it. Would be a great place to start, because you're filling the landfills in Goodwill boxes with just a bunch of crap that nobody wants. But they're too polite to tell you that. So one of the things I made fun of mugs. I had this guy reach out to me, this artist from Georgia, and he basically asked me. He said, "Hey, John, I've read your book. I've listened to like 90 of your podcasts. I love what you do. I want to help you bless your wife. Will you answer these 9 questions?" And I'm like, man, this guy's using my playbook against me, but all right, I'll play. So I answered the 9 questions, and a week later, he's like, "Hey, the gift's done. Can I hand deliver it to you?" So I made it for a public place, 4:45 on a Tuesday. And so I could jet in 5 minutes and go home for dinner as my excuse if it goes sideways. And so I get there an hour early. He walks this kid. He looks like he's like 14, and he's wearing like a plaid shirt, and he's carrying this Tupperware container that it's like has like claw marks or something on the side. I'm like, is this an animal? Like, this is getting weird. And he proceeds to pull out this $600 mug, and carved into it is my wife's whole life story of her on the farm with her dad who passed away of cancer 12 years ago. And, her with our kids, and like just super detailed. It was basically almost like winning an Emmy or a Lifetime Achievement Award, but put into this mug. And I'm tearing up. I'm like, this is unbelievable. Then he pulls out another one, and it's my whole life story. Then he pulls out like this $2,500 vase, jar looking thing, and carved into it is our whole life story together. And then he pulled out another one, and it's 50 lines handwritten of every Bible verse in the Old Testament and New Testament that talks about giving or gifting. It was like $6,000 he just hands me. I'm like, dude, you're blowing my mind. Who are you? Are you in town for a conference or speaking? Or he's like, no, I just came to deliver these to you. And I'm like, where are you from? And he's like, Atlanta. I'm like, Atlanta, Georgia? And he said, yeah. I said, how long a drive is that? He said, about 9.5 hours. And I'm like, dude, you are crazy. Like, I'm crazy. Like, this is nuts. So long and short is he ended up staying at our house. My wife is super private. And like, when she saw the mug, she was like, this is the best gift anybody's ever given us. And we started to do these pieces for literally billionaires. Like, I've seen billionaires cry because, and even Mark Cuban and other people have said this, like, everybody, even at the highest levels, it's lonely. And we all crave as a human being to be acknowledged, to be appreciated. And oftentimes we're not appreciated by our kids, our spouses, our employees. Like, even as a leader, we all want to be treated VIP and treated special and feel like our life and our legacy matters. And when we've started to do these pieces, we partnered with the artists. And I mean, it's crazy some of the people that are receiving these. I'm like a Jack Daly. We made one for him and he had delivered it. And he made a video on his own saying, John, you will never beat this gift. Like, I'm the most impossible person to buy a gift for. And so seems silly, like a mug, but almost everybody drinks coffee or tea. So these mugs and these jars, call them jars of awesome, have become one of my favorite things to give even, friends and people that were in my wedding and you name it.
Yeah. Well, so tying into that, right? I think like my last business, and when we came out of 2008 into early 2009, right? The business was decimated. We had a fashion jewelry company, and it was very discretionary, fashion driven thing, and people just weren't spending anything in that environment, right? The world was in an economic meltdown, and people would not spend. So we went back. We said, okay, the old business is over. What are we going to do? And we looked at all the products, and we pulled out things that were really inexpensive, but they weren't for self-purchase. So just making it cheaper, it still wasn't going to go. But what we did is we picked things that were intended to be giftable and meaningful. Right, they had some meaning and significance for people, and right away we became those items became number one bestsellers for the outlets that carried them. So it was like that lesson is not lost. I mean, then the second part of that, like of giftable things, like I've done coffee mugs in the past with logos on them and that kind of thing, but and some of them were crap, as you say, but every time we'd had a winner one, it was like, because it was a little bit more special and it was something designed by them to treasure. And I learned that, like, okay, well, if I had a really unusual mug that was cool, sort of cool on its own, and then subtly it had something about us on it, then it might stay around. But a regular one, just logo on it, is going to get thrown away or just looked at as crass. But if we gave you like the really oversized mug or the special shaped one or the whatever, like something that made it stand out, but making it about me is and then having it be truly generous, not like about the giver, but about the recipient, right? So here you go, Jack. Here's the mug that represents you, and it's thoughtful. It's tied into all that. I think is really brilliant.
Yeah. Well, I mean, his wife Bonnie, they've been married 50 years. We ended up tying in each of the pictures and things we put on there spelled out the name Bonnie. And made it just tied into him. I mean, he's a very black and white, like awesome, not awesome. And when he got it, he was like tearing up and was like, "What the heck?" And it's fun. I mean, I'm in the business of playing Santa Claus, and it's fun to light people up that way that are used to not being lit up. That's for sure.
So for our listeners, right, like many of you probably know Jack Daly. He's been on the show before. He's a sales trainer, coach, all around great guy. He's a friend, and he lost his wife to cancer about a little over a year ago. And so that mug represented all that she was, and she was a high school sweetheart, and it was truly a touching thing.
Yeah,
to connect that in.
Yeah, it was awesome. He's become a friend and a mentor, advisor, and a raving fan advocate. Which to get somebody, I could if I tried to hire Jack as a salesperson, it would cost me millions of dollars. Or really, he's not even hireable. But he's now become what we call an active loyalist, which most people, all their clients are passively loyal, like they stick around for low prices. But I mean, people ask me how many sales reps I have, and I tell them 3,000, and they're like, "How do you afford that?" And I'm like, "Well, I just douse all of my CEO clients and all of my VPs of sales and directors of marketing and assistants to all of those people in things like the artifact mugs and the knives, and they tend to, not shut up about this crazy giftology guy." And so it's powerful. People think that's such a waste. Why would you spend $600 on a mug? And I'm like, well, just to get somebody like Jack Daly talking about you on a frequent basis, like, what's that worth? And I never tell him he has to talk about me. He wants to talk about me. And that's the big difference is most people, they view gifting and relationship building. Everybody says they're in the relationship building business, but most gifting and things that they do are very transactional. And they sure don't inspire anybody to go out and be a raving fan. Like everybody says they want raving fans, but they're not willing to do the little things that would inspire somebody to go from being passively loyal to being actively loyal. So I consider it a huge honor to have guys like Jack that go way out of their way to open up doors. And one of the reasons I can get 25 to 50 grand to speak is because of guys like Jack that are sticking their neck out on the line and endorsing me to people that I probably, early on I didn't deserve to be endorsed to, but they were, they believed in me. And one of the reasons is because of how I treated them. So,
I think it's really great because so you create a custom mug for him. It's thoughtful and so on. It takes effort. It's meaningful. It's special. It's about them. Then you stand out, right? The relative cost of that is not that high. But if you think about like traditional gifts, I'm going to send you flowers or a bottle of wine, right?
Yeah.
It might even be a really great bottle of wine, but after I'm done drinking it, unless it's like that $50,000 bottle of wine I took a picture of the other day. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
No joke. A special Magnum of Screaming Eagle at this restaurant. I didn't drink it, but I just took a picture of it.
Yeah.
But if I had drunk that bottle, I'd probably keep it for a long time. I do have I have one bottle of wine left over that was a gift that I've kept the bottle, and almost none of theirs. But this one I got after a visit to Richard Branson's new house and island. And then they gave me a bottle from another island, Necker Island, of champagne. And we drank that, and I kept that because I'm like, oh, then I was over there, right? I actually wasn't on Necker, but on the new island.
Yeah.
So I kept that, but you can't recreate that, but you could do something really special. So if you're not going to spend 50 grand, then what could you do to make it more meaningful? Have it be something they take home, that they cherish, that they keep around, that's about them, not about you, and then get remembered forever. Because I think when I go to say thank you to someone, I've often done that. Send them some flowers, send them a bottle of wine. Flowers die, the wine gets drunk, the bottle gets recycled.
Yeah. No, I mean, we put together a list for our clients if they want to do gifting on their own and not hire us to do all their gifting for them with our service. There's a top 10 list of the worst gifts to avoid giving if you want ongoing referrals without asking. And it's things like gift cards, flowers, alcohol, food. It's all of these things. And one of the big things is that cost per impression. People are like, well, I'll spend $50 on brownies or $100 on a bottle of wine. I'm not going to spend $300 with you, John. Like, that's too much. And I'm like, well, you spent $100 to get one impression because they'll think about you one time. And my stupid knives or the mugs will get used once a day for the next 10 years. That's 3,600 impressions. Even if you're a better marketer than I am or a better service, I'm going to win because I'm top of mind. And there's that tangible thought and trigger that's going to take place 3,600 times. Like, I'm going to get the phone call and the referral more than you are just by sheer numbers of how that works. And so my cost per impression is like a penny. So it seems expensive on the front end, a lot of things we talk about, but I'm like, people pick up $600 bar tabs and think nothing of it. And the next week they forget about it because it was just a consumable. It was just it was just a normal like Morton's dinner or whatever. And so I challenge people to say like, hey, I'm not saying spend more money. I'm saying redirecting the marketing and entertaining and sponsorship dollars that you're already spending and redirect 20% this way and watch the how fast people take your phone calls and respond to you. Watch how fast the referrals start to grow because you're treating them in a way that truly is lasting and impactful versus I said thank you, great, like lasted 5 minutes. Like I want something that lasts 5 or 15 years, and that's a big difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as you're talking, I'm thinking about the standout things that I remember, the gifts. I just had one recently. Cameron Harold and YPO or Noomdara from Thailand invited Lori and I to dinner, which is great, but to dinner at the French Laundry, right? And truly memorable dinner, not an ordinary kind of thing. I will remember that forever.
Yeah.
Right? That particular dinner, right? So something really special and stand out and something. Now, will I say anything bad about them ever? Never. Will I sing their praises on the podcast and everyone else? Yes. Cameron Howard runs the COO Alliance. It's like YPO or EO, but for the second in command. You should go check it out and send your president COO to that.
There you go. He just got exposure to.
Just get the big shout out to our thousands of listeners. Like what is it that we could break through? I think about this, like I'll help a company grow and I'll work with them for 2-3 years. And then I'm not like, I don't know what exactly to do. I've had a great thing with someone and send them something. So let's use it as an example. B2B, a lot of our listeners would have something like that. So what do we want to do to let those people know how much we appreciated the few years of working with them?
Yeah. Well, I think the big thing is identifying the who. Like a lot of times people forget all of the different important relationships that they have. Like I was just talking to a YPO before this call, and they're the incoming learning chair, and they'd heard of, we've known each other for a while. And he's like, John, I heard about you, coaching some of your EO and YPO clients and helping them give gifts to their vendors. And I think nobody does that. It's brilliant. Why? Tell me why you do that. And I said, well, most people don't have a business if they're honest with themselves without their vendors, and yet they treat them like crap. They expect them to buy them gifts. And I'm like, when you buy your vendor a gift and love on them, guess what? They like subconsciously, they want to go out of their way to give you better pricing. They want to go out of their way to work the extra mile when crap hits the fan. It's just a better relationship, but there is real dollars and cents to that. And I learned that from OC Tanner. They're a big company out of Utah and $800 million company. And they buy more Rolexes in the US than anybody else. And yet when Rolex comes to town, they buy them dinner and send them gifts. And I remember asking them why. And they said, well, we're honored. Yeah, we spend, 20, 30, $40 million a year with them. But it's important for us to have access to Rolex. And we're really happy that they make the product. And so we're going to treat them like the customer. So identifying who is most important. And oftentimes people, they'll treat the CEO one way and treat them like at a Ritz-Carlton level. And then they treat the assistant or the chief of staff at like a Motel 6 level, which makes no sense. Like, why would you treat the person who's the right-hand person controlling the calendar and the schedule and their ear? Why would you not treat them like peers instead of treating them like pawns? And so oftentimes understanding the who you're taking care of and why you're doing it, and then understanding the value of the relationship. Like, if somebody's worth $1 million to you, like, what would you be willing to reinvest to keep them as a client profit? And most people are like, well, I just send a bottle of wine. I'm like, they're worth $1 million. Even if you have a 10% net, that's $100,000 to your bottom line. Why would you not go to the ends of the earth to maybe reinvest 5, 10, 15% of net back into them to keep them as a client, to grow with you? And hopefully when the relationship maybe parts ways, they're going out of their way to sing the praises to their EO forum or their YPO forum or on a stage somewhere. That's where guys like Cameron Harold, he's a client of ours. He was one of the first guys advocating for me because I sent him probably 100 gifts over 5 years and never asked for anything in return. And even to this day, like if he's double booked, he refers me to speaking engagements and sends gifts to all of his COOs and CEOs and event planners. And so people, they don't understand that relationships should be for, everybody says they play the long game, but they really don't. Like they play what's somebody done for me lately game. And so identifying that list of who the most important people are, oftentimes the gift itself is only 50% of it. It's the handwritten note that goes with the gift. It's how it's personalized and engraved, how it's packaged. Does it feel like it came from Amazon, or does it feel like you put some thought into it? So I can send knives, like the Cutco knives, to 1,000 people, and based upon the little details of who it goes to, and the fact that I include the assistant, and the fact that I'm not sending it at Christmas or after a transaction or after a referral, the timing of the gift itself is just as important as what you're sending. So people get hung up on the what. They'll come to me like, John, I want to order Bose headphones. And I'm like, first off, we're the gifting experts. Like, you've been thinking about gifts for 17 seconds, and just because you love Bose doesn't mean that's the best gift for your clients. You're thinking and shopping through your own lens. And so oftentimes when we talk to people, I'm like, the what we're going to send is the last piece of the puzzle. The who, the when, the why, the how, all of that is way more important than the what. And that's where people mess up. They think they can cut corners and send things out without a handwritten note. And to me, I won't send a single gift unless a handwritten note goes with it, for us or our clients. Like, that's what makes it feel like it was a human being sending another human being a gift, not automated on Amazon. And that's where people, they completely ruin. They're like, I sent gifts and I didn't get the response. I'm like, no crap, you didn't get the response because you didn't follow the recipe. You decided not to put yeast in, and you think you're making bread. You're not going to make bread unless you put yeast in. I'm sorry, it's not how it works. And so they get pissed off at me sometimes. Other times they're like, yeah, you're right. I guess we did kind of cut the corners, and no crap, we didn't get any good response. So on my soapbox, I'll calm down a little bit. I'm starting to get sweaty over here and get the come to church or something. But
well, no, I've like totally done that, and I've thought I was really thoughtful. Okay, I think of each person. What do I want them to have? What time is it that I'm doing this gifting? Like around the holidays, I'll send books to clients, and I'll think about what are they grappling with right now? What book would make the real difference? And so I think about it, and then I include a little note for them. But it is like I've sent them on Amazon, right? Just okay, click it, sit here, type the message in. It's done. We're done.
Yeah, you just want to get it off the list. I mean, most women in general are way better at giftology and understanding the importance of the details. Like, it's like going to a wedding. Like, you got to have the right note, the right wrapping paper. Right. Sending a gift at the holidays is actually on that top 10 worst gifts to give. It's also the worst thing to do is to send a gift. I call it no ABC gifting. No anniversaries, no birthdays, no Christmas. And the reason is if there's 50 gifts sitting on our conference table, even if your book was with a handwritten note, but it's one of 50 things sitting on their table, it just kind of gets blended in. It's just noise. Whereas if that same book with a handwritten note shows up in the middle of July, just because, not as a obligation, like I had to do this because it was Christmas or the holidays, the timing of that matters. And so I don't know if this would be valuable to your listeners, but that 10 worst gifts to avoid giving and the timing, they can go download it for free. It's I can't be the giftology guy and not give some sort of gift, but if they go to thegiversedge.com, they can download both the timing and also the 10 worst gifts to avoid giving. But the timing matters. It does. It's a simple thing, but it's one of the most powerful things that we talk about.
Well, I think about that. Like, I get half a dozen Harry and David baskets in the holidays that show up. Like, oh, who'd this one come from? Oh, yeah, that was a supplier in Asia. And, they're great. They're lovely. We eat them all up, and some disappear off into different people's homes. And, and then there's like the one thing that sits there for 6 months that's left over. Nobody opened that piece of stuff.
Gross, yeah.
Right. But there's that kind of thing. And we all do it. But at the same time, like, does my gift even matter then? Do they care whether or not they got something from me? It doesn't break through any noise at that time.
Most of those things get regifted to other people, and maybe you get the token thank you for it if they're really polite. But internally, they're already eating and drinking themselves to death. It's the holidays or it's whatever. Like, they don't need more chocolate and nuts and candy. And yeah, but besides the point that even if they did love it and you get one impression from it and it's gone. But you have the holidays and anytime a gift's expected or out of obligation, it lessens 90% of the impact. I mean, people are like, why don't you give gifts after referrals, John? Like, aren't you appreciative? I'm like, yeah, I'll send a handwritten note. In fact, we send handwritten notes on $9 stationery. It's a sheet of steel. But I'm like, I don't send a gift after a referral because that's what takes the relationship and turns it into a tit for tat transactional relationship. And nobody's referring you business because they got the gift. I tell people, give me your list of 100 or 500 most important people. Let's love on them ahead of time. And guess what? They'll go send you referrals, but don't make it a tit for tat type thing and send the gift after the referral. You completely ruined what you're doing. And they don't, they're like, oh my gosh, like I say, I'm not in the transactional business. And that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm just rewarding a transaction. Like, that's not good. I'm like, yep, you're exactly right.
I think if you're going to do that, like there are complementary businesses that will refer us business, and then we'll pay a referral fee for it, right? If I'm going to pay for something like that, I'd rather just make it straight. Like, look, here's some cash. Thank you for that. And I'll send you something and you can pay me. And so that's a straightforward thing. It's not about the gracious gifting of it, but it's that this other thing is about, look, just thank you for the relationship, for the work, for the opportunity, that it's not transactional in nature, right? There's nothing more I need to get from you by giving you this.
The most powerful gift you can send is
when
you don't need to send a gift. And think about your spouse. You only give flowers or whatever gifts on anniversaries, birthdays, and Christmas. That keeps you at like basically zero. Like, you break even. But when you send a gift out of the blue to your spouse or to your client, and it's not because of a deal, it's just because I was thinking of you. I mean, that's how we get away with sending the same gift to 100 or 500 or 1,000 people. It comes completely out of the blue. It's not tied to anything other than the relationship. And people are like, well, that was thoughtful. Like, that was amazing. And then they take it home and they show their spouse. And the spouse is like, who the heck is John Ruhlin? Like, I've had people, wives that wanted to go to dinner or go on vacation with my wife and I, just based upon like, John Ruhlin guy is unbelievable. Like, he's so thoughtful. They've never even met me before, but the gift showing up out of the blue, just not asking for anything, like, it freaks people out in a good way. They're like, it's because it's not the norm. It's mostly transactional type gifting is what's done.
Yeah. That's really great. So the recipient, the message, the timing, what are the other pieces?
Yeah, I mean, most of the time people ask themselves, what's the least they can get away with? Like, when they're doing their brochures or when they're doing their gifting, they're like, oh, well, what do you want to spend, Bob? I don't know. Like, let's spend, like, can we get away with $17? Yeah, I think we get away with $17. Hey, Susie, here's your we need to send something out to our 10,000 employees or to our 50 referral partners, whatever. Like, here's your $10,000 budget. Go make it happen. And she's, poor Susie's like looking at it like, really, I got to take care of, 1,000 people with 10 grand, so I get $10 a person. Like, that's how people make their gifting decision, is some indigestion gut feeling on a random Tuesday before Christmas. And so most of the time asking, laying it out as a plan, like you would operationally in any other finance or marketing, and saying like, what's the value of these relationships? What's the most we could do here versus what's the least we can get away with? When you go the extra 10 or 20%, the other person feels it. They can tell, like, did you go cheap on this or did you go all in? And when it's, if everybody says their most valuable thing in their business or one of them is relationships, then how you acknowledge, appreciate, and show that matters. So Paul was a master. My original mentor was just a master at it. Like, if he could afford to do it, he just did it. He didn't, put it through some mathematical equation. Like, he just went all in on people. And because of that, it came back to him over the course of decades, 100-fold, because people internally wanted to reciprocate back even more than what they had received from Paul. And so he did it, with the right intentions. That's the other big thing is, Gary Vee and all these guys talk about playing the long game, but most people, the long game is 10 months from now, like that's as long as they get. And I'm like, the Cleveland Indians, I gifted for 6 or 7 years. They're clients of ours. And then in one random Sunday, I had 38 emails were in my inbox, and they had referred me individually to 38 other pro sports teams. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, and it was because I had repetitively loved on them, not asked for anything. And because of that, over time, the momentum and the reciprocity started to stack. And, we continue to have a good product and a good service. Like, you can't have a sucky product or service and give great gifts and think that that's going to bail you out. Like, that's not how it works. It has to be the cherry on top of sundae. It's like when I go to a restaurant and they find out that my wife likes a certain kind of chocolate. We might spend $300 at the restaurant, but if they pull out this special chocolate dessert for her at the end as a surprise and comp that on the bill, it probably cost them $3, or maybe not even that. She'll talk more about the stupid dessert than the $300-$400 we spent on the meal, because it was the little cherry on top of the sundae that surprised her. And we're all human beings that way. We all love to be. So when we can go in and say, what's the most I can do, not what's the least I can get away with, that's a powerful thing, because there's a lot of talkers out there in business. But putting your time and your money towards something really shows people that you are different and that you value the relationship differently than almost anybody else.
Yeah. So make it meaningful. Don't be stingy. Don't be automated. Make it thoughtful. Make it more about them than about you. Don't be transactional. Invest for the long run. Be generous and loving in the gift. Think about the timing of it and who you're actually giving it to. And don't forget the other people that you are connected to or touching in the organization.
The inner circle, yep. Yeah. Take care of the people around them just as much as you take care of the so-called check cutter or the person signing the checks.
Yeah.
The decision maker. Yeah. Yeah, it's not rocket science. I mean, most of the people that hear us speak, they're like, John, that was amazing. I love the stories, but nothing you shared was rocket science. I'm like, no, like, these are all little things that if you follow the recipe, like, anybody could do it. Now, we talk to people all the time, like, hey, it's really hard to do this for hundreds or thousands of people. And it is. That's why we exist. But at the end of the day, nothing I shared in Giftology, the book, or in our course, or when I keynote, any of it can be duplicated. Like, it's not like we have like some secret sauce that we hold back. Like, we lay it all out. It's just a matter of, even with your spouse, like, it's one thing to say like, oh, I'm going to do this for my wife or my husband. It's another thing to actually like listen year round and to actually put the work in. Instead of, spending, having 3 fantasy football leagues, like, maybe you should cancel one of those and spend a little more time on, loving on your wife. Like, that's people are like, I want you to do this for my wife. And I'm like, dude, I can't do that for your wife. You need to be listening year round and incorporating these principles. You're not going to outsource that to me. Like, that's the one relationship I will not gift on behalf of. If you read Giftology, you'll become a better gift giver. I promise. Like, what's funny, people assume I'm a great gift giver by nature. Like, that's my love language. And I'm an introvert, and words of affirmation are my love language. I use gifting to get people to respond to me. But I'm like, if a farm boy from frickin' Ohio can be a great gift giver, anybody can be. It's just a matter of consistently being intentional about it. And if you do that, then magical things happen.
Yeah. Well, I'm certainly stimulated by the conversation. It has me thinking about a whole world of things. The book is Giftology. The company is giftologygroup.com. John Ruhlin is the rock star guest. John, give us the 2-second version of what your company does. What do you actually do?
Yeah, so the simple fact is people send us their list of their most valuable relationships, where we help them walk through what we call a loyalty action plan and figure out whose loyalty matters and who do they need it from, who do they need to be engaged and actively sending business, or who's important in their world 360 degree, look at vendors and employees and referral sources and media and all that. And then once they've identified that, the who and how much they should be investing or how much those relationships are worth to them lifetime, then they send us the details and we pick the gift, we ship the gift, we handwrite the note for them. We basically act as their generosity manager and their gift strategist. And they outsource all of that to us so they can collect the referrals and the thank you notes and focus on the things in their business that only they can do. And so we become kind of their gifting agency.
Yeah. But what's cool is it's not like a throwaway check the box kind of thing. It's involved. They're still, it's stayed meaningful, even outsourced in this case, unlike my pick something from Amazon.
Yeah, it's we don't. If you want T-shirts or or cheap mugs from China or gift cards or any crap like that, like, we're the last person you should be talking to. We don't do any of that. It's only things that we would say are could become artifacts in that person's life. And so yeah, no crappy things from China with logos.
Well, I guess I should write up my list of vendors and customers, send it to you, and get started getting real about my generosity. Oh, it's funny because I feel it and I want to do it, and yet I feel like I do such a crappy job of it.
Yeah, well, you're not alone, man. If everybody was good at this, my like Giftology group wouldn't exist. It'd be needed. It would just be another marketing channel of noise. But because most people don't do it very well, it's less than 5% of people out there. It stands out and really has that kind of long-term impact to a bottom line, not just warm fuzzy feelings. There's real ROI to it.
So, giftology.com. What was the other one? The gift you mentioned.
Giftology Group.
Giftologygroup.com. And then the one but the crappy gifts, what was that?
Oh, the Givers with an S, the Giver's Edge.
The Giver's Edge. And then, of course, we mentioned COO Alliance and Cameron Harold's group, and Jack Daly is like jackdaly.net, I think. And we'll put all those links in the show notes for you so you can go click and follow up on all these groovy folks. And you can also find the mug, a video of that Jack put out. I think it's on YouTube probably.
You go to artifactmug.com. We actually featured that one story in Jack's video. So
well done. You'll get a picture of that. Of course, we bring you a guest or topic on all things to do with scaling your business every week right here. And then we've got we've got 140 some episodes now and counting on the website. So you can go download and listen to these on all things related to all areas of scaling up people, strategy, execution, cash, other CEOs, coaches, that kind of thing who've successfully scaled the company and dealt with things along the way. All that's at scalingcoach.com, along with free downloads of our tools. We'll send you a book for free right now. You just pay the shipping and handling if you want the scaling up book. So all that stuff's scalingcoach.com. Thanks again, John, for joining us on the show this week, and we'll talk to everybody next week.
Thanks.
Well, as always, special thanks to the original growth guru, Vern Harnish, for starting the whole world of scaling up. This show is produced by Crystal Carson. Our audio production is done by Podfly Productions, with audio editing by Albert Burge, show notes compiled by Ann Codina, and proofreading by Tim McGowan. If you got some value out of the show today, please like it, click it, share it, pass it along to others so we can continue to grow the influence. Thanks again for listening, and keep scaling up.